And now I think I'm ready to start prototyping, which will be in part 2. Prototyping sucks.
Roll credits.
Welcome to part 2 in my multi-part series on my latest game, Trivia War. If you haven't already seen part 1, go ahead and check that out and come back to this video. By the way, my name is Tez Fraser. I'm a 25-year-old indie game developer. And on this channel, I do tips, tricks, tutorials, and vlogs about the games that I'm currently making. Speaking of which, you should wishlist the other game that I'm currently working on, Rated Mutant. Rated Mutant follows Tori, whose father has been kidnapped by the mysterious V. She traverses hard terrain and obstacles in a dungeon laboratory, all the while fighting various hordes of monsters and mutants with her arsenal of weapons. Links in the description below. I think for a lot of other game developers, this is the fun part. This is the part where the creations come alive, and they feel like things are finally starting to click and make sense. But for me, I personally like the dream and the planning phase much more. And this part feels grindy, which is probably why it took me so long to get to this phase in the first place. So I've actually made a decent amount of progress, I'd say. I used that Python script that I talked about before to basically create a question object that holds category, question, correct answer, wrong answer. And at the start of the game, the text file parses to create a big old list of set objects. This took more effort than originally expected. I wasn't properly formatting the file into correct JSON, and I just had to chalk that up to growing pains. Part of the reason I'm even doing this project is to learn, and that's not always going to be very fast. From there, I made a start screen with a floaty logo. And this is where the question database is built. There's no performance issues doing that, and I'm able to interact with the database the way that I want to. But this is where my first issue arose. I wanted to do a press any key to continue, but at the same time I also wanted to use Unity's new input system. And it has not been a pleasant experience. I basically could not find a way to do this using the new system, to detect any button press from a controller or key press of a keyboard. I ended up going with this current keyboard command, but this doesn't work for controllers obviously, and I just wanted to move on. Sometimes it's more worth it to not worry about the small stuff until you absolutely need to, and this was definitely one of those times. From there, I made a quick mock-up of the drop-in, drop-out screen, and once again, I moved on for the sake of time. This was more new Unity input, so I decided to just continue on with my progress. And now finally, I started prototyping the actual game loop. As mentioned before, the first part of the loop is that the player chooses a category. I actually do not know what the distribution of questions and categories is, so I have to make sure that they don't run out or repeat. So I'll make a copy of the master list each game, and every round of the game I get all the available categories from all of the remaining questions left. When you're working with random, you have to make sure that you're accounting for the worst case scenarios. I choose 4 random categories from the available list. I also added a bit of code so that the same category can't be chosen 2 rounds in a row. I dropped all the category buttons into a group so that I can easily hide/show them. After the player has chosen a category, I randomly choose a question from that category, and I remove it so that there aren't any double questions. Then I made another group for the answer buttons, and I randomly decide which button will hold the correct answer. When the correct answer is chosen, the game just proceeds for now. In the console, it tells you if it's wrong or right. But the idea of this was really to get things going. I'm not necessarily going for a full experience here. I did end up going back and adding some timers for the sake of not showing answers until you can get a chance to actually read the question. And I added a 30-second timer after you've gotten to read the question, and after that 30 seconds, you will actually see the answer highlighted. You would have had to answer before you just automatically get the question wrong. And this is the most basic version of the game loop. You choose a category, answer a question, repeat. Obviously, none of the RPG elements are here, but I did start making a player class that holds some of these elements. While testing this out, I did discover something weird. There are all of these short codes in the database for the questions that actually map to symbols. Sometimes we do this kind of thing for the sake of getting data from one place to another while preserving the data's integrity. So in this case, coming from a web API, some of the symbols aren't valid in URLs, so that's probably why it is coded this way. Think about the fact that you can't use a slash in a URL unless you're actually trying to go to a page or a directory. So like in this case, we would have to substitute slash for some short code that means slash. So I wrote a function to handle this, not knowing that I could probably have chosen something built in, But as a great philosopher once said, it be like that sometimes. And this was unfortunately just the beginning of my worries. Not only did I have to continuously keep going and finding these symbols, and then I realized some of these questions kind of suck. Easy questions are too obscure sometimes, categories feel off on occasion, it doesn't feel like general trivia, and as such I'm probably going to have to curate, which is what I was trying to avoid this entire time. So sometime in the future I'm probably going to spend a full 24 hours curating, which is what another great philosopher would call a big and probably will be the first but not the last scope creep. So that's what I've done. Let's talk about what's next. Figuring out players and controllers, integrating them into the game loop, and adding attacking and upgrading weapons. And probably a little playtesting too. Conceptually, the game seems fun, but I need actual people to play to know if I'm correct. And this marks the end of part 2. Let me know in the comments what you think so far. Can you see the vision I'm going for? Do you also hate prototyping? I want to hear from you guys on your process. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so that you get notified on when the next video drops. Once again, my name is Tez Fraser, and I'll see you in the next one.